bottom of exactly what happened here. Outages began to be reported last night around 7 p.m. And we just heard from the local congressman, Congressman Hudson, who posted on Twitter that individuals vandalized at least two substations in Moore County with, quote, criminal intent, according to the congressman. Now, we have also heard from the local sheriff who posted on Facebook saying that once utility companies began investigating the power outages, they found evidence and discovered that the evidence indicated intentional vandalism had occurred at multiple sites. Now, we also got a hold of the local fire chief in the area who confirmed to us that those substations that have been damaged did in fact sustain some sort of gunfire damage, that there was some shell casings that were being recovered at the site. So although the motive behind all of this remains under investigation and remains unclear, local officials confirming to us that it was indeed gunfire, apparently shot at these substations that caused the damage that have now left more than 40,000 customers without power. The local fire official also confirming to us that they have seen an increase in emergency calls, and that because the power is out, traffic lights in the area are also failing, and that has already led to some car accidents. People who rely on medical equipment such as oxygen have also placed emergency calls. Local fire and police officials trying to provide a local station so that people can charge their devices and their medical equipment. All of this going to be part of an investigation. The power unlikely to come back today, Jim. They tell us that the equipment that was damaged is difficult to replace, and this could go on at least until Monday. Jim?
All right, Gloria Pasmina, I hope they can get that power restored as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. Up next, why a police chief has now been placed on administrative leave after she was pulled over while riding in a golf cart. We'll explain that next. You're live in the CNN Newsroom.
I want to say something about the deal with North Carolina pertaining to their grid system over there. In the year that Homeland Security got all over me after my wife and I had been married for maybe, I guess maybe a month, may not even been that long, I decided to go on another trip to Washington, D.C., and in doing so, I don't remember what all occurred, how it occurred, but they wound up stopping me and having me institutionalized in Clarksville, Tennessee for approximately 3 days, while Homeland Security out of Nashville, Tennessee, went to the hospital where I was institutionalized for 3 days and interviewed me. I still got the I don't even know what you call it now. I guess it'd be the register sheet that all visitors has to sign before they actually go in to visit whoever that they're going to visit. I got fortunate to be able to rip that sheet out. I got it somewhere. I don't know. It'd probably take a month of Sundays for me to find it, but I do have it somewhere to where all the visitors that come that day in visiting everybody had to sign off. So Homeland Security did sign off on it. But by doing so, the doctors requested for them to keep their weapons outside, that they could not bring their weapons inside an institution like that, that it had to be agreed upon before they ever come in. So I guess they done that. So they sat down and they interviewed me. They wanted to know this, wanted to know that, what was my intentions towards wanting to go to Washington, D.C. And I told them, I said, I'm going up there to open up a can of worms. I go, that in which what took place towards Desert Storm, was the wrong move. You went to war with the wrong people, and that you needed to evaluate what you're doing. And I was fixing to go to Washington, D.C. and get with a bunch of media to reveal that. Well, once they determined that I didn't have no intentions toward wanting to harm nobody or kill myself, they walked away with a clean bill of health. And basically, about 24 hours later, the hospital administration made a decision towards letting me go in and on my wife's reconnaissance towards basically being in her care, because we hadn't been married long. And I went ahead and went home, because at the time we was living in Troy, Tennessee. And I was determined that I was going to go up there, because I knew that what they had done was bad. Bad in the sense towards getting involved in something that they never should have gotten involved in. And even to this day, various politicians that does run for the presidency pertaining to national issues, as well as Donald J. Trump, that admitted that we would have been better off to have never given that group of people the authorization of being in control of OPEC pertaining to all the oil fields, especially with the Saudi Arabians over there pertaining to that oil industry, OPEC. But that it left a void, because in reality, after they finally did get Saddam Hussein, it actually brought more instability into that area than it did stability towards allowing for all the terrorists to basically flog into that area after Saddam Hussein was hung by his own people. And I realized Saddam Hussein was let's listen to this for a second.
To Mary O'Connor being placed on administrative leave after this body cam footage revealed that she was being pulled over. She told the deputy that she was the Tampa police chief and that she was hoping he would let it go. So in the body cam footage, you see that a golf cart is being pulled over. O'Connor is in the passenger seat. Her husband is driving. And after the deputy proceeds to explain to them why they were being pulled over, which, by the way, was because they were driving a golf cart on a public road without the appropriate tags, this happened.
Is your camera on?
It is.
I'm the police chief in Tampa.
Oh, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm hoping that you'll just let us go tonight.
So she shows her badge. She later gives him her business card, says, if you ever need anything, give me a call. I'm serious. She has since said that she apologized for having that golf cart on the road without the appropriate tags, and says she understands why some folks may think that she handled it in an inappropriate way, but points out that she knew she was being recorded. That's why she asked if the video was on, according to her, and also says she has called the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office to offer to pay any sort of potential citation related to that traffic stop. But now you have the mayor chiming in, and mayor is saying, and I quote, let's read this statement together, "We hold everyone accountable no matter their position, and this behavior was unacceptable. Chief O'Connor will go through the due process and face appropriate disciplines." There's an investigation that is now ongoing, according to the mayor, and in the meantime, O'Connor is on administrative leave. Jim?
All right, Layla Santiago, those body cams, they reveal.
I think where everybody's missing the boat on that at is the fact that it's not just that it wasn't licensed to be out on the road,
And there are.
but you're supposed to have proper lighting, proper headlights. You're supposed to have proper tail lights. You're supposed to have the right equipment on the road. That way somebody won't plow into you and either kill you that's in the golf cart or whatever, or kill whoever hit them. It's a safety issue. It really don't have nothing to do with a violation issue. It's a safety issue. That's the whole primary purpose for the police officers supposed to serve and protect the American people, is over safety. It ain't because necessarily she was out there on a golf court. It wouldn't matter if she was out there on a golf court, or if she was on a mule, or if she was on a gator. They got different things that they use in the farming industry. And if those pieces of equipment aren't up to snuff towards having the proper lighting and the proper blinking system, and yes, it's supposed to have a tag on it if it's out there on a road, then they get a ticket. It don't have nothing to do with the fact that she was out there on a golf cart. It's the fact that she was impeding danger upon to the public as well as herself as far as safety issues. Getting back to what I was talking about a while ago pertaining to what the Secret Service had done to me up in Clarksville, Tennessee, that following next night, whenever I went home, I got up very quietly and secretly, to the point that my wife did not know that I had gotten up, and I left a letter on the table telling her where I was going, and that I was going where I was going, and that I would be back whenever I got back, and that's whenever I would be back. And I basically signed the letter, got in the automobile at the time, which was an Omni, and took off to Washington, D.C. But this time, rather than going the eastern route that I know that they would be looking for me at, in which they was, they put out like an all points bulletin on me, even though the officers had went into that hospital and interviewed me. Rather than go the eastern route, going up towards East Tennessee and going up towards Pennsylvania and on that way, West Virginia, on that way, or Virginia, I went ahead and went over the Mississippi River down here by Dyersburg and went up Missouri, all the way up into basically St. Louis area. And then I went back over into the southern Illinois area, and then I kept going until I got over to Indiana. I wound up in Indiana for 3 or 4 days. Keep in mind, this was a period probably about a week and a half, and I wound up in a parade there in Indianapolis, Indiana, or maybe it was Columbus, Ohio. I wound up in a parade. It may have been Indianapolis, Indiana. I don't remember. It's been so long ago. I'd have to look at all my photographs and pictures to be able to identify which area that I was in at the time. But I do remember getting pulled over by 2 Ohio police officers, state troopers, that checked out my credentials, checked out my vehicle, made sure all the lights worked, made sure all the blinkers worked, made sure that I had insurance, made sure that I had proper driver's license. And my vehicle at that time looked like something out of a I guess you'd call it, I don't forgot now the proper name of it, pertaining to art. It's unusual art. That's what my vehicle basically looked like because of the statement that I was trying to proclaim by using my car basically as a billboard. Maybe it's called a radical art. I don't remember. I think it's another name other than that. But anyways, they pulled me over, told me that if I had any sense, I would turn the vehicle around, that I was not going to make it to Washington, D.C. successfully, that I needed to turn my automobile back around and go back home. Well, because they wrote me out a warning ticket, and because it was so unusual, within about 20 miles, maybe 30 miles of the state line going into West Virginia. As soon as I got over to West Virginia, I decided that I was going to pull over, knock on somebody's door, call my wife at the time, Shirley K. Jackson, and explain to her what had just got through happening, but I had means of continuing on my pilgrimage. She said, "Be careful, Dennis. You know what you're into. You know what you're fighting up against." I hung up the phone. And later on that afternoon, I come through a little town called Wheeling, West Virginia. Okay. I think this is the first time that I've ever told anybody this. I have told people before that I took the original sword box and throwed it into a ravine, that Jolene Nugent, the attorney that was assigned my case there in Wheeling, West Virginia, a federal case, also her assistant, had to crawl down in this ravine, which was about 25 feet deep, with a bunch of honeysuckles and everything else, a bunch of, whatever. And it was an extraordinary venture for her and her assistant to go down there and drag this big, humongous box that originally had a sword in it, the original sword box that Homeland Security had confiscated the sword in Jackson, Tennessee, pertaining to them getting an officer to basically arrest me for a deadly weapon, even though the weapon was made out of aluminum and couldn't have cut hot butter at the time. She drug that out. But what I haven't told, I've told that before, what I haven't told is that night, the reason why I throwed that in that ravine or that ditch where I was at right there was because there was an electrical station pretty close to where that box was that I wound up having to jump the fence, go over a chain link fence. Of course, I wasn't near in the shape that I am now. Anyways, I hopped over the fence. And the reason why I've done this is because this particular building, which was an electrical station building that had a door on it, somebody had left the door barely cracked open to where you could still see the light on the inside. And I was hoping, because my heart was frantic, I was scared, I'd never done anything like this towards breaking in to anything like this before, or doing anything like this. I basically went in that room, and it was filled full of all kinds of equipment and all kinds of different gauges and all kinds of stuff. And luckily, there was a telephone on the desk. I picked up the telephone. I called my wife. I explained to her where I was at and what I was doing, and that I was fixing to get a hotel room. She must, or somebody, I don't know, something occurred to the point that Homeland Security knew just exactly what town I was in. Homeland Security knew just exactly what hotel that I was in. And later on that night, Homeland Security busted down my door, drug me out of the room, put me in Wheeling, West Virginia County Jail, or it may have been a state jail. I don't even remember now if it was a county jail or a state jail. But I remained in there for a week before I even knew what my charges was, which was bogus charges towards me supposedly going to head to Washington, D.C. towards being an assassin, towards going to kill the United States President of the United States, which at the time was George Walter H. Bush, old man Bush. My point is this about the electrical grid that recently just got through being sabotaged in North Carolina. It's in response towards me putting out a message in 2007, right up here in western Kentucky, that God had showed me that there was going to be massive, massive electrical disturbances in the future. That at that time, God had showed me just to put it on paper about electrical disturbances. And of course, I had to explain myself later on by passing out that material up in Kentucky, that the electrical disturbances that I was talking about was pertaining to old grid systems here in America, grid systems that had been overloaded, weird, unusual weather patterns towards either being extremely, extremely too cold or extremely, extremely too hot. It was also pertaining to either tornadoes, ice storms, anything to do with natural occurrences. Basically was in my line of thinking that whenever I put out that message pertaining to electrical disturbances, as well as meteor displacencies and solar flares that can cause electrical disturbances, was my primary concept pertaining to electrical disturbances. But now, since I've watched this particular program and seeing where somebody had shot into a grid system, which basically is one of the most vulnerable things out there. If you get to looking, just about anybody can drive right up to one of these stations where they got all kinds of big freaking transformers. And basically the only thing you'd have to do is throw a wet towel in there that would basically fry a bunch of equipment and cost somebody a bunch of money. You wouldn't even have to shoot into it or throw a piece of metal in there and walk away, because there's going to be a very big explosion if you do that. It's very, very vulnerable to me, these open stations like that should be under lock and key. They should be in a room. They should be air conditioning in the summertime where they don't get too hot, because those transformers get extremely hot out in the sunlight, in the dead heat, whenever the sun is penetrating upon that equipment, because at that period of time, that's when everybody's running their air conditioners and those transformers are working double time. But to me, it should be mandatory for any electrical grid system to have not only fences around their stuff, but to have other means of corridoring the area off where nobody can get around or close to those particular items for that very purpose, causing electrical disturbances. We live in a society today to where we basically have people that's out of their freaking minds, that are willing to do any and everything to cause havoc and harm and hurt to people's lives. And if they can do this at a whim of a hat towards doing something erratical, it doesn't matter if it's here in America or in some of these other countries that have open grid systems like that. They need to protect those things, just like they need to protect any type of public watering system that goes into the city or wherever that they're at, towards protecting those two as well, because we have crazy people in the world today. We have mean, cruel people in the world that are willing to do any and everything just to say, basically just to have bragging rights, to brag to their buddies, well, I was the one that done that. I was the one that caused that. That was me that done that. Bragging rights. Have bragging rights because you've been destructive. People don't realize how vulnerable that we are in the times that we're living in right now. I mean, just like these people right here working in these sweatshops, seems like I heard something about some big, I don't remember now what it was, but they was allowing for these sweatshops to work for these companies. I mean, there's so many loose ends out there, regardless whether it's the power grid system or other government agencies out there that have basically just left themselves so open. I could go over probably 100 different things pertaining to the safety issues in New York City pertaining to the subway system, towards how people could create havoc, or any type of rail system as far as that goes. You know, you got your train system, you got your rail system that carries people on. You got, the Denver, Colorado's got a rail system. Chicago's got a rail system. Phoenix, Arizona recently put in a rail system. Any major big city ordinarily is going to have a rail system that usually does 60, 70, maybe 80 mile an hour. And if those areas ain't protected, you got nut jobs out there that'll do any and everything to cause grief and harm and hurt to people's lives. And I hate to say it, but we really do. We're very, very vulnerable whenever it comes to having electrical disturbances that's not just going to be caused by massive forces of nature going one direction or the other, but pertaining to crazy people out there that's willing to do any and everything. I just wanted to make a note of that, because whenever that hit me like that, it brought back a flood of memories pertaining to what I was trying to prevent from happening, that our government obviously didn't think it through or didn't care about whenever they went to war over in the Desert Storm, Desert Shield deal. That one of the key elements that has put us where we are today, towards putting us in behind the eight ball, is because of that particular agency that worked with the government of the United States, that basically, I don't know, it goes beyond carelessness, or it goes beyond gross negligence, because even President Ford said that he disagreed with going to war over there, that it was a big, big mistake, but he didn't want it exposed or revealed to the American people until after his death, which basically speaks volumes about how frightful that he was about putting out that type of information, towards not trusting his own government. And whenever you have a government that is being run on this level, you have a very, very instability, unstable situation that can go just as easily one way as it does another, that basically helped to create or cause January 6th. Now look at this.
In the Caspian Sea. And tonight, Lisa Ling explores the heart of post-Tiger King America, where the abuse and exploitation of big cats continues. But a group of passionate female activists,
all them penguins or whatever that there was out on that beach that had beached themselves, this isn't the first time that scientists have seen this, or people in general has seen this, and to this day they still don't have a reasonable explanation. But I come up with one, and they don't want to listen to my explanation, which is this: they obviously got in something that beached themselves. I don't know for sure. I didn't get the whole story on this particular get up, but in most cases, regardless whether it's seagulls, I mean not seagulls, but penguins or whatever. I don't even think those were penguins. Those were something else. But most of the time, those mammals get down in the areas where either the water is extremely, extremely hot, or they get into some poison that basically poisons them and makes them go basically mad, to the point that they all at one time want to commit suicide, because they know once they get out of the water, they're going to die. Just like us humans, if we go into the water without oxygen, we're going to die. There has to be a logical explanation, the reason why that we see this happening all over the world again and again and again, for all these mammals to just up and commit suicide like that. I think that they have either gotten into poison, or they have gotten into areas that was so hot, so heated up, that it basically done something to their brains, or it almost killed them and didn't completely kill them, and they was basically at the point of a mercy killing, and that was the way that they could take care of themselves, by basically committing suicide. That's what I think, and it's all due to the works of man, because of all the stuff that we're doing to our planet, and seeing, you know, that massive volcano that recently just erupted about 48 hours ago over in Hawaii. Me talking about all these signs of the ends of times pertaining to the volcanoes. It's up underneath the ocean. I read something yesterday on Facebook where a massive, one of the biggest known volcanoes under the ocean, it has erupted too as well. So there's a lot of things going on right now, not just with crazy people, but with the planet, with our politics, with all the above, that if we do not take a hold of what's happening here, I'm telling you, we are knocking on the doors of glory in regards towards God coming back and taking us out of this incredibleness that is occurring here, to the degree of throwing this planet off into great tribulation. And whenever that happens, you think that you're seeing odd and weird stuff now. You ain't seen odd and weird stuff. You hadn't seen horrendous bad stuff happening pertaining to the forces of nature. These are only the beginning phases, that he hadn't even come close of hitting the top of the iceberg pertaining to what yet is to come during the Great Tribulation period, in which I pray to God that I will be found worthy to not have to experience anything like that, or anybody else, because I don't even have words to express the grief and the misery and the sorrow that people are going to be going through at that time, whenever God comes back in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon them who know not him, and basically catching ablaze a fire towards this planet that mankind has basically helped to destroy, and bring its own Achilles heel, or its own demise into an existence, because Satan has obviously blinded and deceived these oil tycoons to the degree that now it has jeopardized our own safety and security. Just like these electrical grid systems that's out here in the middle of everywhere, that any and everybody can basically go in and sabotage. What happened in North Carolina, that, you know, all it takes is a terrorist act like that, to be able to shut down a lot of stuff that would cause havoc to a lot of factories that's got moles, and they'd have to go in and break all the moles loose, and it could cause refrigeration losses. It could cause havoc to the grid system pertaining to cities that rely upon electricity to make sure everything is running properly. I could go on and on and on about the security breaches that these electrical companies, even right here in this area with TVA, has not put in place properly to make sure stuff like that don't happen. Fortunately, I got in and out of that building. I made my telephone call. I left my message. Telephone call probably wasn't but about a minute telephone call. I, looked, I didn't see no cameras, but even if it was, I could have gotten very, very lot of trouble just for going into that building and making that telephone call, because under those dire, extreme situations. Maybe if I did get captured or caught, maybe I would have stood in front of a judge to the degree of explaining to him, Judge, because at that time, people didn't have cellular phones. We're talking about in the early 90s. Maybe I could explain to the judge, I had to do that because I felt like that my life was in peril. I felt like that my life was being hunted by this particular agency, Homeland Security. Maybe he would have understood it. Then again, maybe he would have. But the fact of the matter is, I went into that building without authorization to make a telephone call, just as simple as it would have been if I would have basically went into somebody's house that had their door open. And we're talking about an electrical federal power station. So by these people being able to get close enough to that power station to be able to shoot a gun into those power lines and those transformers, it just makes me want to shake my head and get sick at my stomach at the same time, to think to myself, my God, how vulnerable can these professional people that provide such of an adequate service to people's lives, because some people are on life support machines. Some people has to have electricity because of running some sort of oxygen machine or something. I mean, there's fortunately most hospitals, most places of any importance has a backup generator, but still it creates havoc whenever somebody does that. And it costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair. I think 9/11 was short-lived. I think at first people dramatized 9/11 and went a little bit overboard towards 9/11, just like what happened in my life in 2005 up here in Martin, Tennessee, pertaining to David Moore. How that they basically was wanting to ruin my life by using some sort of a phony fake charge of falsifying files, which was basically a bunch of BS to begin with. But I think that now we've become too lax to the degree that just about any and everything could happen with all the above in regards towards a bunch of crazy people. And it really doesn't matter if it's American crazy people or it's foreigner crazy people. Anybody that's out to do any type of harm, any type of damage to the public pertaining to these type of facilities like that ought to be locked up and the key thrown away. They ought to be locked up and the key thrown away. If anything, they should probably go to somewhere over in Cuba, to Guantanamo Bay, and be locked up with all them terrorists over there. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. But I say all that to say this. By me hearing that only adds assurance of the warnings, the advisories, the predictions that I put out in 2007 have miraculously fulfilled that prophecy again and again and again, regardless whether it was flooding, tornadoes, wind damage, hurricanes, ice storms, or maniacs like that. And of course, in 2007, whenever I made that prophecy, it got so hot and so dry that year that somewhere down, I think in Alabama, on the Tennessee River that the river got so hot and it got so low that they had to shut down one of the dams because the turbines was getting so hot they was afraid it was going to burn them up. I think it was either Wilson Dam or the dam south of Wilson Dam. One of those dams they had to shut down because it got so hot and the water got so low they was afraid it was going to burn the system up. So that in and of itself was electrical disturbance, in addition to the great ice storm that hit about a year and a half later right up here in Kentucky. And I can name off probably 100 more other events that's caused major electrical disturbances here in America, not counting the electrical disturbance that's going on right now over in Ukraine and other parts of the world pertaining to the flooding that recently happened over in Pakistan. I could go on and on and on about how that those warnings, those advisories, was taken out of concept, taken out of the wrong interpretations towards people trying to think that I was going to try to either create the electrical disturbance or cause the electrical disturbances, that once more was taken completely out of context. I could go on and on and on how that I have tried to help the American people, beginning in 1991, whenever I was trying to go to Washington, D.C., to, yes, open up a can of worms pertaining to that this Luciferian Lucifer that I met over here in Martin, Tennessee, was not Saddam Hussein or any of the people that surrounded Saddam Hussein. But they just went ahead and done what they wanted to do. So now we're all suffering the consequences on account of what has happened, what has been done. Thank you for listening. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. God bless. God bless America, and God bless our troops.